One of the forgotten queens of England or Britain is Mary of Modena, the wife of King James II. Her husband would be deposed off the throne in what became known as the Glorious Revolution. She was a devout Catholic and was devoted to her husband and their children too. Mary was a princess who came from the Italian Duchy of Modena. However, when her husband fled from England because of the fear of civil war, giving up his crown, Mary became known as the Queen over the Water by the supporters. She lived inside of France with her husband and children, and they were given help by the French king. Mary was popular at the French court in opposition to her husband, who was considered boring. However, on the 7th of May 1718, Mary of Modena, the former Queen of Scotland, England and Ireland, died inside of Paris, but in the years after her death, her coffin was broken into and was even stolen, with her remains being lost during the brutality of the French Revolution. But what happened with this shocking scandal? And to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Mary of Modena was born on the 5th of October 1658, and she was the eldest child and only daughter of Alfonso IV, the Duke of Modena, and his wife. On the 20th of September 1673, she was married by proxy in a Catholic ceremony to James, the Duke of York. James was at the time the heir to his brother's throne in England. King Charles II, his brother, would throughout his reign have many children, but all of these were illegitimate and they were banned from the throne, meaning that, against all odds, the heir to the merry monarch would remain James, the Duke of York, Mary's husband. She probably never believed that she would one day become the Queen of England, Scotland and Ireland, especially with the reputation of her brother-in-law, the English king. However, on the 21st of November 1673, Mary and James, the Duke of York, married in person, this time in a Protestant ceremony within England. Mary was actually James's second wife, as his first wife, Anne Hyde, had died, leaving him with two daughters who were Protestant. Mary, the eldest, would later become Queen Mary II, and the youngest would then become Queen Anne. Mary of Modena was viewed with a great degree of suspicion by many English Protestants at the time. They thought that she was a spy or an agent of the Pope Clement X, who had been instrumental in organising the union between her and James. James had recently converted to Catholicism, and this upset many people inside of his kingdom, and his marriage to Mary was seen as a possible attack upon the Anglican Church. Many thought he would reverse the Reformation and establish Britain as a Catholic nation yet again. King Charles II actually suspected this too, and he kept his brother James out of London. And James, because of this, became the king's commissioner to Scotland, and he lived in Edinburgh with Mary of Modena, his wife. Mary and James had a number of stillborn children. However, in the June of 1688, Mary gave birth to a healthy boy named James Francis Edward Stuart. He would later, it's believed at the time, succeed as King James III, but this would never happen. The prospect of a future Catholic Stuart dynasty ruling over England and Britain sprung Protestants in the nation into action. When James took the throne, he himself was very unpopular, and this also transcended onto Mary of Modena's reputation. On the 20th of June 1688, a group of Protestant nobles approached William, the Prince of Orange, who was married to James's oldest daughter Mary, to come to England with an army to overthrow and depose King James II, Mary's father. James thought he would win over this rebellion, and he turned down offers of military assistance from the French, King Louis XIV. However, when William of Orange landed in southwest England on the 5th of November 1688, this signalled the start of the Glorious Revolution, known for its lack of bloodshed, and much of James II's royalist army actually switched their allegiance to William of Orange. Even James's younger daughter Anne supported William and her sister. The situation became rather dangerous, and on the 10th of December 1688, Mary of Modena fled to France with her son James. The next day, her husband, the king, tried to flee, but he was caught in Kent, but William later allowed him to leave. James II would give up his throne, and with this Mary of Modena also lost her position as a queen, and she would then live in exile from the countries that she once ruled over, taking up position inside of the French court. James II and Mary were welcomed by King Louis XIV, who offered them a palace and a large pension, and they lived in relative luxury. Inside of France, they even had another child, who died at the age of 19 from smallpox, and she kept the title of a princess. Later, their son would become the figurehead for decades of Jacobite rebellions in Britain and also in Scotland. Mary was well liked at court, as mentioned, but she in her final years sought refuge from the stress of being a queen in exile of the convent of the Visitations near to Paris. She stayed there for long periods of time with her daughter, but over time she became rather depressed. She was said to have been a model of desolation, and she was deprived of keeping the company of her own family. She lived out her final days in virtual poverty and was unable to travel by her own, as all her horses had died, and she could not afford to get new ones to pull her carriages. However, on the 7th of May 1718, Mary of Modena, who had been ill for some time, died. She had been suffering from cancer for some time, and some close to her even regarded her as a saint. Now, for a queen, it would have been expected that she would have been buried in a huge mausoleum or church. Many of the royals, even those who lived in exile in France, were given decent burials inside places such as the Basilica of St. Denis. But Mary of Modena was buried amongst the nuns that she had befriended and visited for many years at the convent of Visitations near to Paris in Charlotte. Her body was buried in a vault and was looked after by the nuns who visited regularly. However, when the French Revolution broke out inside of the country, there was a huge amount of turmoil and trouble spreading, especially relating to the bodies of members of any royal family. People were being led to the guillotine for just uttering a sentence of support for a former monarch, and there were decrees issued for the French people to attack and desecrate the remains of former kings and queens. Mary's husband James, despite the fact he had ruled Britain, had his tomb and coffin taken, and this went missing and still has not been found. And this was exactly the same fate that Mary of Modena's body was subjected to. The convent where she was buried was ransacked and looted, and her burial vault was opened, and the coffin was removed from the grave. Mary's body, it's believed, was probably taken out of the coffin too, and may have been dumped in a shallow pit or grave outside, similar to what they did to the French kings and queens in St. Denis. But her coffin was also shattered. But one part of this does exist, the brass coffin plate which today is inside of the British Museum. It's not known how this fell into the hands of the museum either, and her remains were never found or subjected to reburial after the desecration of her tomb. As mentioned, Mary of Modena is often considered a forgotten queen who ruled over England with her husband as his consort, but their reign was somewhat of a disaster. Her son would later be the figure of rebellion as Jacobites wanted to restore her line to the throne, but she probably never intended to become Queen of Britain in the first place. However, she only held this position for less than 4 years. But following her death, Mary of Modena's remains were subjected to a huge amount of desecration during the turbulent French Revolution. Thank you for watching, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. And again, thank you so much for watching.